It was the summer of 1991. At a quiet government school in Punjab, everything looked normal. Except at WASN, T.3 schoolgirls vanished overnight. No goodbye, no explanation. The principal said they were transferred. But Salim, the old school janitor, knew better. He saw blood in the staff room sink. He smelled something foul behind the girls' dorm, and he remembered the silence. That eerie, unnatural silence that blanketed the campus like a curse. 6 years passed. The world moved on. But when renovation workers cracked open a hidden wall, secrets poured out. A decaying satchel, a blood-stained scarf, a diary filled with fear, and a photo of 3 terrified girls' faces frozen in time. What followed was a storm. Whispers turned into accusations. The charming teacher, Sir Raza, had dark connections and darker intentions. At least 3 girls were pregnant. One of them refused to stay. Quiet. Hina, she vanished, but she didn't die. She survived. Voiceless, 30 years later, she was found in a shelter, mute, broken, but still alive, and when she faced her abuser in court, she didn't speak, she simply lifted a whistle to her lips and blew one sharp sound. That was enough. Because this isn't just the story of 3 missing girls. It's the story of what silence can hide and what courage can uncover. The ceiling fans spun lazily in the heat, doing little to ease the choking air that clung to the government girls' high school in rural Punjab. Dust shimmered in sunlight, slicing through the hallway windows, and somewhere in the distance, a coal called. Oblivious to the unease growing inside the school walls, Salim had been the school peon for 28 years. He had mopped these floors through riots, lockdowns, and Eid holidays, seen headmistresses come and go, and even survived the Great Bat infestation of 1983. But that day, the morning after the last time anyone saw Uzma and Hina, something in the air tasted like metal. Wrong off. He arrived early, as always, keys jangling from his belt, thermos of chai in one hand, a rusting mop in the other. As he approached the staff room, he stopped short. The door was slightly ajar. That in itself wasn't strange. But the smell was a raw, sour smell, like iron and antiseptic. Inside, the chairs were upturned, papers strewn, and in the steel sink behind the dusty tea counter, blood dried at the edges, streaks still wet in the drain. Salim stepped back, his throat clicked dry. Billy, ya fir kisi ne kot kaya hoga. He mumbled to himself. Maybe a cat. Maybe someone just cut their finger. Maybe. But even as he walked away, he knew this was no ordinary mess. By mid-morning, the school buzzed with strange energy. No announcements, no morning assembly. The principal, Mr. Aftab, cancelled classes for grades 9 and 10. Girls whispered in corridors. Teachers avoided eye contact. Arai Uzma Kahan Hai. Hina B. Gayab Hai, whispered a girl near the courtyard. Unko transfer kar diya gaya, Hai, another said, mimicking the principal's clipped tone from roll call si kaidin, main donna, or file bhi ready thi. A scoff. In the girls' dormitory, behind the prayer area curtain, Salim found Hina's pink dupe under a bench, torn at one end. Lipstick smudged on the inside. Near it, a cheap gold ring and an empty envelope. The flap read, Sir Raza. Salim stared at it too long. He tucked the dupatta into his pocket. That night, he lay on his sharp eye under the broken fan, sweating, staring at the ceiling. He remembered something strange from 3 days ago. He had seen Reza Sob, young, handsome, always well-dressed, always too friendly, slipping out of the girls' wing well past 8 p.m. It was a Friday. No one was supposed to be there. But Salim had kept his mouth shut. You don't question people like Sir Raza, you keep your head down. You mop, you forget. Except now. He see, OULD and single quotes. Next morning, Mr. Aftab ordered the dorms locked until renovation. Teachers walked stiffly, eyes forward. Someone had painted over the graffiti in the back corridor overnight. The word Buakufi was still faintly visible underneath. Salim knew something terrible had happened. But the walls of this school were built not just of bricks, but of silence. heavy, enforced silence. So he went back to sweeping floors and unlocking staff bathrooms. He put the dupatta in a tin box under his bed. And he watched as Uzma and Hina's names were slowly scrubbed from registers. Watched as Sir Raza started signing attendance. Again, like nothing happened. Watched as fear settled in like mold between the tiles. 6 years would pass before the truth even dared peek its head out. But even then, it would begin with a sound, a scrape, a discovery. And the man who saw it all would finally speak. By 1997, the school hadn't changed, but Salim had. His back curved now, like the heavy silence he'd carried for years. His one beard was peppered with grey, yet every morning he showed up. Same uniform, same chai thermos, same mop dot. But now, he avoided the girls' wing. He never looked down that hallway, never paused near the locked dorms, and never mentioned Uzma or Hina. No one did. The dormitories had remained closed since that summer. No official reason, just rusted padlocks and bureaucratic forgetfulness. But then came the renovations. The school was selected for a new Punjab schools modernization project. A fancy name for a fresh coat of paint and shoddy plumbing. Contractors swarmed in, and with them came the first cracks both in the plaster and the truth. On a humid Tuesday morning, Salim was told to clear out the old storage closet behind the girls' dorm prayer area. It had been sealed shut for years. The door resisted, but with a grunt and a shove, it opened. Dust exploded in his face, thick and choking. Inside were rusted chairs, torn books, and old examination sheets. As he dragged out a broken desk, his foot struck something solid beneath a false panel in the wall. Curious. He crouched and pried it open. Behind it, wrapped in cloth and time, was a satchel lever. Cracked and covered in mildew, he held it like a bomb. Back in the janitor's quarters, he opened it under the flickering bulb. Inside, a rolled medical report, dated March 1991, marked confidential. The name Hina, K.A. diary, frayed at the edges. Its cover faded pink, a Polaroid. Slightly bent, showing 3 schoolgirls in uniform. Their expressions vacant, one biting her lip, one looking away, one staring straight into the camera. Eyes wide with something between fear and plea. Salim sat frozen. He hadn't seen the third girl before. It wasn't just Uzma and Hina. There had been another. He stared at the names inside the diary. The handwriting was hurried, slanted. He remembered it vaguely. Hina used to write long essays for English period. Her words always carried weight, even as a child. He opened to the middle. He told me he would protect me. He promised it wouldn't happen. But now he says it's my fault. That if anyone finds out, I'll be thrown out. I want to scream, but my voice won't come out anymore. I'm scared. I think Uzma knows. I think she heard me crying. She asked me if I was okay. I lied. Salim rubbed his face. 6 years, and he'd lived like this had ended. Like silence had kept the ghosts away. The last few pages were smeared, almost like they were written through tears or blood. If anyone finds this, please believe me. Sir Reza is not who you think he is. And I'm not the only one. He dropped the diary. Outside, children laughed during recess. Salim felt sick. He knew what he had to do. He didn't go to the principal. He didn't go to the police. He went to the one person who might listen. His son. Adil, a journalist, young, angry, and too curious for his own good. That night, Salim laid out the satchel's contents on the sharpie. Adil took one look and went pale. Yeah, SAB, ... 6 years ago. Abu, why didn't you say anything? Voice broke. Kisko Batata. Unlog on. Car. Main surf. EK Peon Hoon. Not anymore. ABAPEPA Sabut High. This is a case. This is criminal. Salim nodded, but his eyes stayed on the photo. The third girl. Who was she? And where was she now? As Adil packed the evidence into a new file, Salim looked out the window. The school building stood like a monolith against the night sky. Silent, brooding. He thought of the envelope he found with the dupatta all those years ago. Saraza, he thought of the rumors that died before they reached the staff room, and he thought of the guilt that had aged him, more than time ever could. That satchel hadn't just revealed the past, it had opened a wound, one that was still bleeding, but the next step wouldn't come from him. It would come from the words Hina had left behind, words that had waited 6 years to be read. The diary had a soft, worn cover that smelled of mildew and something older paper soaked in memory. Its pages, tinged yellow, were fragile but still intact. Adil handled it like scripture, his fingers trembling as he flipped to the first entry. February 9th, 1991, new diary, given by Uzma. She says, I need to write things down, not for school, for me. She's smarter than she knows. I think I love her, a little, but not the way I love him. God forgive me. Adil looked up at Salim. Who do you think she meant? He asked. Salim didn't answer. He just lit a cigarette, his first in a decade. The entries began innocently. Descriptions of hostile life, lunch breaks, quiet rivalries among classmates. But it didn't take long before the tone shifted. February 23, 1991. He smiled at me today, said my handwriting is beautiful. No one has ever noticed me like that. I stayed back after school, helped him mark papers. He gave me a toffee. I think he knows. I think he feels it too. Adil swallowed. The handwriting was girlish, hopeful. It made everything that followed more chilling. March 3, 1991. Uzma suspects. She asked why I stay late. I lied. I said I was helping Madam clean the cupboard. She looked at me like she knew. I was lying. I feel terrible. But he said it has to be a secret, that people wouldn't understand us. The word secret appeared again and again, like a spell or a warning. March 18, 1991. He kissed me today. Behind the science lab. My legs wouldn't move. I felt like I was floating and drowning at the same time. Is this what love is supposed to feel like? He said no one must ever find out. That it would ruin everything. Salim pressed his palm to his forehead. Whoa, Yuzbana raha. Tha. Hilta. Tha. Ask. Sa. Jai spili kasatha chuha, he muttered. Adil kept reading. The entries began to grow shorter. More chaotic. More fragmented. March 30th, 1991. He said I was being dramatic, that it's not his fault, that he warned me. I told him I'm late. He told me to fix it. What does that even mean? April 4th, 1991. Uzma cried in the dorm today. She said she can't take it anymore. That she knows what's happening. That she knows about the others too. I asked her what she meant. She said, you're not the first. April 6th, 1991. He slapped me. Said, if I talk, he'll say I was seducing him. That no one will believe me. That girls like me always lie. I don't understand what I did wrong. Adil looked like he was about to throw the diary across the room. This guy was a predator. A manipulator. Salim nodded, his eyes hollow. April 10th, 1991. Uzma gave me an address. Said if things go wrong, I should go there. It's her cousin's house. But she looked scared. I don't think she plans to leave. I think she wants to do something else. The final few entries were smeared. The ink ran in some places like it had been wet with tears. April 13th, 1991. Sir Raza says he can fix everything. That he knows someone who can take care of it. I don't want to go anywhere. I want my mother. I want to disappear. April 14th, 1991. If anything happens, it's not my fault, he promised. Please believe me, someone, anyone. The last page was blank. Adeel closed the diary and sat silently for a long time. She was just 15. Salim didn't respond. The silence in the room was thick, heavy. It carried years of guilt and horror, shame and secrets. We need to find Uzma's cousin, Adil said finally. If she was given an address, there might still be someone who knows where she went, or where she was supposed to go. Salim hesitated, then reached beneath the tin box under his bed. He pulled out an old envelope. Inside it, a folded note, an address scribbled in shaky handwriting. Lahore. They stared at it. Tomorrow, Adil said. Salim looked older than ever, but in his eyes was a flicker of something that hadn't been there for 6 years. Courage. The next day would begin a search, not just for answers, but for the voices long buried. Before he was a shadow in a diary, Sir Raza was a hero in the school, tall, well-dressed, and always smelling faintly of cologne and chalk. He had arrived in 1989 with a smile that won over parents and a voice that silenced classrooms. Fresh out of college, he brought with him what the staff called modern energy. He organized debates, started a science club, even got the girls' school new chairs through a government scheme. Teachers envied his influence. Students adored him. And the principal, Mr. Aftab, protected him like a golden calf. Salim remembered the early days well. He'd seen Raza's car parked late into the evening. Seen him walking out of the girls' wing alone at hours no male teacher should be there. Once, Salim had even caught a glimpse through the courtyard window Rossa with a girl. Maybe Uzma, maybe Hina. Their silhouettes framed by the flickering tube light. She was sitting, he was standing, too close. But what was Salim to do? He was a peon, a mop, not a badge. The teachers turned blind eyes. The girls said nothing, and Raza kept smiling. Flashbacks from Hina's diary burned in Salim's mind. Now, toffee, the hand on the shoulder, the whispered lies, dressed as compliments. Predators don't pounce, they prepare. Adil had spent the last 2 days tracking Sir Raza's whereabouts. Turned out, he had left the school in 1993 under mysterious circumstances. No charges, no investigation, just a quiet transfer to a private institute in Multan. From there, he seemed to vanish. You don't vanish unless someone's helping you disappear. Adil said, phone in hand, eyes bloodshot from scrolling through public records. The deeper they dug, the dirtier it got. 3 other girls from the same graduating batch had missing person entries filed in different towns. 2 had been closed due to lack of leads. 1 had been withdrawn by the family. They're all from the same year, Adil whispered. He had a pattern. Salim remained quiet. Abu, did anyone ever report him? Even back then, Salim shook his head. No, people knew, but they didn't want trouble, and he was protected. Mr. Aftab treated him like a son. They knew their next step had to be Principal Aftab, but first, Adil wanted to visit the school again. The next morning, they arrived unannounced. The new headmistress, a stern woman with glasses that didn't fit. Her nose allowed them 10 minutes. We don't speak of staff who have left, especially under sensitive circumstances, she said. Did he leave because of a complaint? Adil pressed dot. She adjusted her glasses stiff. There was no official complaint, but some rumors did reach the board. By then, Mr. Raza had already resigned. Salim remained silent through it all, eyes on the floor, until they passed the old staff room. The sink had been replaced, the tiles redone, but he saw the same corner where he'd found the blood. That day, where silence had begun its long reign, Adil caught up to him. What are you seeing, Abu? Salim murmured. He never even flinched. Beta. The next day after those girls went missing, he brought Mithai to the office. Said his sister had a baby. Boy, Adil winced. He celebrated. No, he covered. They drove back in silence. Lahore waited. So did that address in Hina's final entries. But Adil wanted more. He needed to find a former teacher who had worked with Raza. By evening, he had a name, Miss Shaista, now retired and living in Rawalpindi. A phone call. Some convincing. She agreed to talk. On the call, her voice was shaky, but what she said chilled them both. I always suspected Raza, but I had no proof. He was ... too charming, and too careful. Once, I found a note in the trash bin. It said, tell anyone, and you'll regret it. It wasn't signed, but it wasn't meant for me. Why didn't you report it? Because the last teacher who questioned him was transferred the next week. He had friends, Beta, higher up. When Adil asked if she remembered Hina, she paused, The quiet girl, always top in English, used to write poetry. I remember once she turned in a story where the villain was a teacher. It was too real, too dark. I should have seen it. They hung up in silence. Sir Raza wasn't just a manipulator, he was systematic, protected, he didn't act alone. And now, it was becoming clear he didn't act just once. Salim looked at the photo again, 3 girls, fear in their faces. The third girl, the one they still hadn't identified, Beta Salim said, "It's time we visit that Lahore address." Adil nodded, gripping the wheel. They didn't know what they would find there, but Hina had left a trail, and the next piece of it was waiting behind a rusted gate on a forgotten street. It began with a smell, the kind of stench that rises slowly, like a ghost, until it chokes the air around it. The renovation workers had been digging behind the west boundary wall, the section closest to the abandoned dormitories. It was supposed to be a routine job: break the old septic tank, lay new pipes, and fill the trench. Instead, their tools hit something solid, then soft, then the smell came. The school was shut for the day within hours. Police arrived in unmarked cars, word spreading like wildfire through the town. Salim heard about it while sweeping the staff corridor. A boy from Class 7 came running, breathless. "Baba, Pichi Kutch, Miller High. Police! Adalah tapelaga dia." Salim dropped the broom. By the time he reached the site, a blue tarp had been drawn. 2 officers guarded it, their faces pale. Adil was already there, recording with his phone, careful to stay behind the police line. One of the officers removed his cap and muttered something to his colleague. A black garbage bag torn open at the edge. Something inside, a fragment of cloth, a lock of matted hair, a partial jawbone. Salim went cold. The past he had buried in silence was now clawing its way back into the daylight. He didn't remember walking, just arriving at the headmistress's office, knocking once, then twice. She opened the door, startled to see him soaked in sweat. "Mudge police say Milner High," he said, his voice hollow. He sat across from the inspector inside the staff room. Same room where he had found blood in the sink 6 years ago. The tiles were newer now. The ghosts were not. "Sir, wo jo Muller High. Uskbari, main Kachyontahun," Salim began. The inspector straightened Chaili Sab Badanine. And for the first time Salim spoke. He told them everything about the night in June 1991. How he'd stayed late for janitorial work, cleaning up after a school board inspection. How he'd seen Principal Afdab and Saraza walking toward the back gate just past 10 p.m. How they carried something wrapped in a dark bedsheet between them. Something limp, heavy. How Raza had hissed, "Jaldi Karo Koidek Liga," and how, the next morning, Uzma and Hina were gone. He hadn't spoken out because he was afraid, because he was just a peon, because silence was what the system taught him. Salim broke down mid-sentence. "Main Samaj, Gaya Thar, Leekandare, Lagda Thar, Undono Kaboat, Asa, Thar Main Chup, Behtar Samja. Galat Kia, Bahut Galat." The inspector didn't speak for a while. Then he asked, "AAPCPA's Koi Sabut Hai." Salim pulled out the satchel now, resealed in a plastic evidence bag. He handed over the medical report, the diary, and the photograph. The officer looked through them with growing unease. "Yeah, case na yahol na padega," he said finally. Outside, Adil was pacing. When Salim stepped out, he looked smaller, but lighter. "You told them everything?" Adil asked. Salim nodded. "I should have done it years ago." That night, the discovery made the local news. No names were mentioned. Just an anonymous source and a line about potential foul play at a government school decades ago. But those who had been there in 1991 knew what was being dug up. Not just bones, but memories. Adil couldn't sleep. He kept staring at the photo. The third girl, her face haunted him. She wasn't in any school records. He'd checked. It was like she never existed. Salim sat beside him, silent. Finally, Adil asked, "Do you think she might still be alive?" Salim didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the satchel. toward the diary, toward the address in Lahore. The next morning, the town awoke to an eerie stillness. The local paper had buried the story on page 7. One paragraph, no photos, number, names, just a vague report. Old remains discovered during school renovations. Authorities are assessing, but the town didn't need names. They remembered 1991. They remembered Uzma and Hina, and they remembered the third girl. Even if they never knew her name. At the bazaar, people spoke in hushed tones. Woto Wahi School, Thana, Jahan Pay, Saraza. Varay, Wo, Case To Band, Hogaya Thana, Yachupa, Diatawa. At tea stalls, retired teachers squirmed in plastic chairs. Beta, Humin Tokach, Nahi Patar, Tharbus rumors, the IHAB, to Badnami High. Kiss Fade, Kibot, ABI. The town recoiled. Not in shock, but in denial. As if acknowledging the truth would soil the illusion they had built. That nothing truly evil could grow in their soil. Meanwhile, the police station grew quiet. Adil returned 3 times that week. Each time, the answer was the same. It's an old case, no active witnesses. DNA inconclusive. Too much time has passed, so Raza hasn't been located. Translation. The case was dying. Quietly, strategically, Salim sat on the sharp-eye. The TV remote untouched beside him. News channels showed protests from Lahore. A politician caught in a bribery scandal. A cricket match replayed for the 3rd time. But nothing about the girls. Nothing about the school. Adil stormed into the room. Abu, we have to go public. And me, interviews. The press, Salim didn't look up. Tum Nahi, Samjoj, Beta. What won't I understand? That they're burying this again. That girl's died, and no one cares. Salim rubbed his face. I kept quiet once. That was my sin. But I have a family, you, your mother. This town doesn't forgive people who speak. Adil was shaking. So you'll let them win again. Let another generation think uniforms mean safety. Salim didn't reply. That night, someone slipped a note under their door. It was handwritten. No signature. Let the dead stay buried. This town doesn't like people who dig up ghosts. Adial read it twice. Salim read it once. No words were exchanged. But the weight of silence was louder than a scream. The next morning, the satchel was gone, stolen, or taken. The lockbox under the bed lay open. Adil turned the room upside down. Who knew it was here? Who did you tell? Salim looked blank. He hadn't told anyone. Someone else had been watching. Outside, the street was quiet. A single crow cawed overhead. Adil stared down the road that led to the police station. Then the bus stop. We're going to Lahore. Salim hesitated. Beta, They can erase files, burn evidence, scare you, but they can't erase a living witness. Salim looked toward the empty lockbox, then toward the photo. 3 girls. One still unaccounted for. Somewhere in Lahore, a street address waited, and maybe, just maybe, a survivor. Lahore was louder than they remembered. It swallowed them in its noise, its endless movement, its unwillingness to stop for anyone's grief. Salim and Adil arrived with nothing but the photograph and the old address written on the back of an envelope, faded with age. The house was still there. A crumbling 2-story structure in a narrow lane near an rusted gate. A balcony with a missing railing. Paint peeling like dead skin. A middle-aged woman answered the door. She looked at Adil for a long moment, then at the photo in his hand. Yeah, yeah, Toshelahai, she said quietly. Mary cousin. Adil's breath caught. She was one of them. The woman nodded slowly. Disappeared. No one ever found her. They said she ran away, left a note, but what? I never believed it. That note didn't sound like her. She would have told me. We were close. She was scared. Of something, or someone. Salim and Adil exchanged glances. The woman invited them inside. Her name was Feriha, over cups of chai. She pulled out an old biscuit tin. Inside were fragments, a letter, a school photo, a broken pendant. Nothing that screamed answers, but each piece held echoes. Shella changed after she joined that school. She started writing in her diary more, and then one day she was gone. Adil asked about the note. Feriha retrieved it from a manila folder. A single line. I can't stay. I'm sorry. Don't look for me. Typed, not handwritten. Shella never used a typewriter, Feriha said. She hated them. Adil snapped a photo of the note. It was starting to come together. Someone had forged a goodbye. They thanked Feriha and stepped back into the sunlit street. Hearts heavier. Back at their cheap rented room near Lakshmi Chowk, Adil made calls. Through an old journalist friend, he got access to archived school records. What they found was damning. In the 1991 roster, only 21 girls were listed in grade 10, but a teacher's roll call sheet from that same year listed 24.3 names were missing from the official record. Uzma.hina.shehla. They erased them, Adil whispered. They scrubbed them clean. Who had the power to do that? The answer came the next day. Adil received a call from a retired clerk who had worked at the education board. Someone came in late 91. High-level told us to destroy certain student records. No explanation. Just orders and money. Enough to keep us silent. Adil asked who signed off the order. I can't say. But the initials were R.A. Raza Ahmed, Sir Raza. He hadn't vanished. He had covered his tracks. But not well enough. Salim sat in the room that night, staring at the photo again. 3 girls. Now they had names. Now they had a trail. But questions still clung to them like shadows. Where was Raza now? Was Shella truly dead, or had she escaped? And who else helped him? Adil stood by the window, phone to his ear. We're going to find him, Abu. We're going to make this right. Salim nodded because now they weren't just chasing the past, they were chasing justice. The address came from an old envelope. Feriha had saved one that once held a birthday card from Hina. Years before she vanished. On it was written a return address, the home of Zunaira's mother. In the dusty outskirts of Kosa, they found the house by its chipped blue door and rusted nameplate. No one had lived there in years, Feriha had said. But the locals whispered. The old woman still sat by the window, waiting. She was there when they arrived, bent, frail, wrapped in a shawl that looked too heavy for the weather. Her eyes were cloudy, but not empty. When Adil said the name Zunaira, her fingers began to tremble. She did not speak. Salim stepped forward. Marji hum Zunaira, Kabari main, Jana Chait, Hain. She nodded slowly, eyes never leaving Adil. Then she pointed a stiff, deliberate gesture to a wooden trunk under the cot. Adil bent down, opened the rusty lock, and lifted the lid. Inside was a single folded scarf, maroon with bloodstains at the edge, a silver whistle, and an envelope. Adil opened it inside. One piece of lined notebook paper, 2 words, help me. The handwriting matched Hina's diary. Salim sat down on the floor. He remembered the whistle. It had hung from Zunaira's school bag. A prefix whistle. Adil gently laid the items out in front of the mother. She reached for the scarf, held it to her face, and began to rock back and forth. Silent tears fell down her weathered cheeks. Why didn't anyone listen? Adil asked, a loud voice cracking. Why didn't anyone see what was happening to them? The woman's gaze found his again. She pointed at her mouth, then her head, then made a sweeping gesture across her throat. Trauma had taken her voice, but not her memory. A neighbor brought tea. She said the woman had stopped speaking the day Zunaira disappeared, that no one had come for her, not police, not the school, not even the local counselor. They said the girl had run away. The woman never believed them. People said she went mad, the neighbor added softly, but maybe she just couldn't scream anymore. Adil took photos of the scarf, the letter, the whistle. Each was a relic, a testimony. Back in Lahore, that night, Salim stared at the items spread across their rented rooms, floor. 3 girls. 3 pieces of a puzzle. But something still didn't fit. The forged notes, the erased records, The tampered roll call. Someone inside the system had helped Raza. And it wasn't just Principal Aftab. Adil sat cross-legged, notebook in hand. "We're missing someone," he said. "Someone higher. Someone who signed the clearance papers. Someone who made the disappearances official." Salim looked up. "Then we go to the board office. Not for answers. For names." The photo of the girls lay between them, now with their voices scattered across blood-stained cloth. A whistle of power, and 2 words louder than any scream: "Help. Me." The next morning the story broke. Adil's journalist friend Renya had taken their material, verified it, and crafted a bone-chilling expose titled "The Vanished Girls of 91. It appeared on an independent news platform at 9:03 a.m. By noon, it had over 10,000 shares. By evening, it was everywhere. Screenshots flooded Twitter. TikTok videos stitched together voiceovers and faded photos. Hashtags like hashtag school silence, hashtag justice for Hachana, and hashtag Raza must answer trended nationwide. But the real shock came when former students began to speak. One by one, they emerged, anonymous accounts. Blurred faces. Women who had long buried the past now found a digital chorus ready to echo them. "I remember Hina crying in the bathroom. Uzma stopped laughing the week she got tutoring from Raza. Shella told me once she didn't want to go home. Said she felt safer there than at school." In comments and threads, an ugly truth began to rise. It hadn't been 3 girls. There may have been more, and they hadn't all vanished. Some just stayed silent. The public pressure mounted, but the system resisted. Local authorities claimed an ongoing investigation. They downplayed the media coverage. When asked about Salim's testimony, the police commissioner said only, "We're reviewing old documents." But Adil and Salim were already ahead. They'd gone back to the board office on inside a dusty records room. Amid ledger books and faded file tags, a clerk quietly slipped them a manila folder. 3 resignation letters, all from early PXT 1992, all citing personal reasons. Salim read the names aloud: Miss Fauzia, Vice Principal Tariq, and Shahid Malik. "Who's that?" Adil asked. The clerk leaned closer. "IT admin. He handled student records." "Where is he now?" "Dubai. Left just weeks after resigning, never came back." Digital footprints showed his departure was abrupt. No forwarding address, no pension filings. A man vanishing just like the girls. Back at their room, Adil pulled out the satchel, laying everything out again. Raza, Aftab, this Shahid guy, they were a circle covering for each other. Salim said nothing. His face had hardened over the last few days. He was done being silent that night. They returned to the police with new evidence. A different officer greeted them this time. Young man with tired eyes but a nameplate that said DSP Farouk. Adil explained everything. The forged letters. The resignations. The Dubai connection. Farook listened, nodding slowly. When Adil asked why the investigation had stalled, Farouk leaned back in his chair. "Because, sir, some uniforms are stitched with fear, others with guilt." He glanced at Salim. "But the biggest crime is silence. And I think you've broken that." The next day, Salim gave his first public interview. On camera. Face shown. He spoke slowly, voice rough, but steady. "I cleaned that school for 30 years. I saw the blood. I saw what they carried, and I stayed quiet. But not anymore. Not when I hear her mother still weeping. Not when I read 'Help Me.' Not when I see their faces in my dreams." The video went viral. Within hours, Principal Aftab's name was trending. Got comments poured in. "Arrest him. If he knew and did nothing, he's just as guilty." Hashtag justice for the vanished. Adil stared at the screen, jaw tight. "It's not over," he said. "We found the records. Now we find him." Salim nodded slowly. Because if silence could kill, truth could resurrect. And Principal Aftab still hadn't answered. They found him in the corner room of a private hospital in Sahiwelthan, pale and tethered to machines. Principal Aftab was now 78, reduced to whispers and wheezing. It took a letter from the DSP and 2 hours of convincing to get inside. The room was dim, curtains drawn, a single fan spinning above. Salim stepped in first. Adil followed, recorder in hand. Aftab opened his eyes, slowly. Recognition flickered. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said. The voice was gravel, but the mind was intact. Adil sat down beside him. "We want the truth. No lies, no riddles." Aftab stared at the ceiling, then nodded. "You already know most of it, but here it is, for the record." He paused, breathing labored. "It started with Raza, charismatic, the kind of man parents trusted girls. Liked him too much. He exploited that. At first, we thought it was harmless. Then the rumors came." Salim remained still. Aftab looked at him. "You were always sweeping, always watching. You knew, didn't you?" Salim's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. Aftab coughed. A nurse came in, adjusted his drip, then left. 3 girls came to me. Separately, all scared, all pregnant. Adil froze. "Pregnant?" Aftab nodded. "Raza promised he'd handle it. Said he knew someone. I let it happen. I covered for him. Why? He had ties, political, religious, powerful men who'd funded the school, who'd attended board meetings. You don't say no to men like that." Adil's hands trembled around the recorder. Aftab continued. "The first 2 girls, I never saw again. Raza said they'd been relocated, but Hina didn't go quietly. She fought, threatened to go to the police. She was different." Salim closed his eyes. "She came to me the day before she vanished." Aftab whispered, begged me, pleaded, said, "If I go missing, you'll know who did it." I did nothing. "Where is Raza now?" Adil asked. Aftab smiled faintly. "He changed names. Went underground. Last I heard, he was running an NGO in Karachi." "Irony, right? Names," Adil demanded the others. "Who else knew?" "Shahid, Tariq, Fawzia. They didn't participate, but they didn't stop it. Shahid deleted records. Tariq signed exit forms. Fauzia ... She looked away. Salim finally spoke. "And you?" "I closed the door," Aftab said. Silence filled the room. Aftab looked toward the window. "I've had nightmares for 30 years. Of blood in sinks. Of screams in dormitories. This confession won't save me, but maybe it'll damn him." Adil pressed stop on the recorder. "We'll take this to court," he said. "We'll drag it all into daylight." Aftab nodded once. Then whispered, "Tell their mothers, I'm sorry." He died 3 days later. The confession spread fast. Media outlets aired the tape in parts. The outrage reignited. Hashtags resurfaced. Public pressure mounted. The hunt for Raza began. But somewhere in Karachi, under a new name and a false cause, he was already preparing to run again. A week after Aftab's death, a new tip came in. Adil's inbox pinged with a message from a middle social worker in Lahore. Subject line, "I think she's one of yours." The email was brief. A photograph attached. A woman in her late 30s, sitting in the courtyard of a shelter for abuse survivors. Her eyes were distant. Her frame, frail. The staff called her Sophia. She never spoke, but she had a habit. She clutched a whistle in her hand while she slept. Adil's heart stopped. He zoomed into the photo. The whistle, the curve of her jaw, the mole near her left brow. It was her. "It's Hina," he whispered. Salim didn't speak. He simply rose, took his coat, and followed. They reached the shelter by noon. The woman running the place was kind, but cautious. "She doesn't talk," she said, leading them inside. "Trauma-induced mutism. She's been here for 5 years. Came in with no documents, no past. We tried tracing her, but nothing matched. No missing persons case. No ID. She vanished in 1991, Adil said softly. They stepped into the courtyard. She was sitting on a wooden bench, tracing circles into the dust with her finger. Her hair, streaked with grey, was tied back. The whistle was around her neck, swinging gently as she rocked. Salim's knees buckled the moment he saw her. He dropped to the ground, hands shaking, tears carving paths down his weathered cheeks. Should have said something, he sobbed. Ya Allah, ... I should have said something. She looked up. For a moment, her eyes registered nothing, then ... A flicker, ... recognition. She tilted her head, studying Salim. Her lips parted, but no sound. Came a tear escaped her eye. Then another. Adil stepped forward and sat beside her. He placed the old Polaroid on her lap. 3 girls, one of them her. She stared at it for a long time. Then, with trembling hands, she pointed at the 2 others in the photo. Uzma Shella, then herself, then the sky. Salim wiped his face. We'll never let them forget you again. Hina leaned forward. Slowly, she unfastened the whistle from around her neck. She placed it in Salim's hand. His fingers closed around it like a prayer. That night, the story changed. The media ran a new headline. Hina found, survivor speaks, through silence. The image of her frail, dignified, scarred-filled news cycles. Support poured in. Survivors came forward. Donations flooded the shelter. Offers of therapy, legal aid, identity recovery. But Hina still hadn't spoken. Not with words, only with eyes. And yet, the truth she carried in her silence was louder than anything Raza had ever tried to hide. The courtroom was colder than anyone expected. It was day 1 of the public hearing against the now identified Raza Ahmad's name, Aref Raza Qureshi. The NGO cover had failed him. A whistleblower tipped authorities. He'd been found trying to flee from Karachi airport with a forged passport. Hina was there. She sat in the front row beside Salim and Adil, dressed simply. A shawl draped around her shoulders, the whistle back around her neck. The world waited to hear her speak. She never did, but she didn't need to. The prosecution played a video. It showed Aftab's confession. His words, his remorse. The names. Then came Hina's evidence, her original diary pages. The Polaroid, the forged letters, and finally, the blood-stained scarf. The whistle lay on the table like an artifact from a war no one remembered fighting. Raza refused to look up. When asked to speak, he denied everything. I don't know these girls, he muttered. Then came Salim. He stood, voice trembling, but eyes steady. He told the court everything. The blood, the dorm, the silence. He ended his testimony with Hina's words from her diary. If anything happens, it's not my fault, he promised. The judge didn't interrupt. No one did. When Salim stepped down, the room stayed quiet. Then came the moment everyone had waited for. The prosecutor invited Hina to speak. She stood, walked to the front, faced Raza, and lifted the whistle to her lips. She blew once. The sound pierced the courtroom. High clear haunting. She said nothing, but in that single sound, the weight of 3 decades of broken girls and buried truths echoed louder than any sentence. Raza flinched. The judge looked at the prosecutor. I think that says everything. The verdict came in the following week. Raza was sentenced to life. The school's board was dissolved. New policies enforced. Cases reopened from decades prior. Other survivors began naming names. But for Salim, it was simpler than justice. It was about finally sleeping at night. One evening, he visited the school ruins. The building had been partially demolished. Only the outer walls remained. He sat in the courtyard, closed his eyes, listened. No more whispers, no more blood in sinks, only wind. Hina never returned to the spotlight. She lived quietly, under the name she chose herself. But sometimes, in crowded protests or courtrooms, someone would hear a single, sharp whistle and remember what silence can cost and what it can heal.